All right, let's dive deep into this self-help classic. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah,
We're talking Stephen Covey, right? His masterpiece.
absolutely. It's a good one.
And, you might be thinking, oh, another productivity book?
Right.
But trust me, this goes way deeper than just like checking things off your to-do list.
Oh, yeah, way deeper.
It's not about that at all.
No, not at all. It's more about building a really solid foundation for a fulfilling life. Like, he starts off with this pretty powerful exercise, asking you to imagine, like, attending your own funeral.
Oh, wow.
What would you want people to say about, about the way you lived your life?
Whoa, okay. That's a little intense, but I get it.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes you think about like what really matters.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're actually living in a way that's like aligned with your values.
Right.
Like it's almost like taking a hard look in the mirror.
Exactly. And from there, he dives into this idea of paradigms, which are essentially, our mental maps of how we see the world.
Mm-hmm.
And he uses this famous optical illusion, the young woman, old woman.
Oh, yeah. I've seen that one.
You know, the one where like two people can look at the same image and see something completely different?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of mind-bending.
It is, and that's his point.
Oh, right.
We all have these mental lenses, that shape our perceptions and how we actually interact with the world.
So to be like truly effective,
Yeah.
we need to become aware of those lenses.
Yeah.
And be open to like adjusting them if they're not helping us.
Exactly. It's like, realizing you've been using a map of Detroit
So,
to try to navigate Chicago.
okay.
You might be putting in a lot of effort, but you're not going to get where you want to go.
Okay, that's a really helpful analogy.
Yeah.
So like once we understand these paradigms, where do we go from there?
So that's where the 7 habits come in. Habit 1, be proactive.
Okay.
Now, this doesn't mean like being a workaholic or
Right.
constantly hustling. It's about recognizing you have the power to choose your response in any given situation.
So even when things are tough,
Yeah.
we're not just victims of circumstance.
Exactly.
Okay.
And he tells this amazing story of Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor, who actually found a sense of freedom even in the concentration camps
Wow.
by focusing on what he could control.
Right.
His attitude, his response to his horrific situation.
Wow. That's an incredibly powerful example.
It is,
Like
yeah.
it really shows that even in the darkest of times, we do have a choice in how we react.
And that's what he encourages us to do.
Okay.
Focus our energy on our circle of influence, the things we can actually change, rather than dwelling on our circle of concern, the things we might worry about but can't directly control.
So it's about like channeling our energy towards things we can actually do something about.
Precisely. And this shift in mindset is also reflected in the language we use.
Okay.
Like proactive people use phrases like, I choose, I will, while reactive folks tend to say things like, I can't, or if only.
So it's about like taking ownership of our lives rather than feeling powerless.
Right.
Now, before we jump into habit 2,
Okay.
he makes a distinction between what he calls the character ethic and the personality ethic. Can you unpack that a little?
Yeah. So the character ethic is all about those timeless principles.
Okay.
Like integrity, honesty, fairness. Like think of it like your internal moral compass that's guiding your decisions.
So it's not about using superficial charm or tricks to get ahead.
Exactly. The personality ethic, on the other hand, focuses on techniques or quick fixes for success.
Okay.
It can be about appearances or manipulating situations to your advantage.
But Covey is saying that true lasting success comes from aligning yourself with those deeper principles.
That's right. He compares principles to lighthouses, guiding us toward effectiveness, even when we're facing storms, like trying to achieve real success without that strong ethical foundation. It's like trying to get to Chicago using a map of Detroit.
Yeah.
You'll end up lost no matter how hard you try.
Right, right.
Diligence and attitude are important, but the first and most important requirement is the accuracy of the map.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how this all fits together. Now, he also talks about the PPC balance.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
The PPC balance stands for production versus production capability.
Okay.
Remember the fable of the goose that laid the golden eggs?
Yeah, vaguely.
So the greedy farmer kills the goose
Right.
to get all the golden eggs at once, right?
He wants it all now.
He wanted it all, and he was so focused on the immediate results,
Yeah.
those golden eggs, that he neglected the goose, the source of those results.
Yeah.
And Covey says this happens all the time in life.
Right.
We push for results,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't take care of our physical health,
Right.
our relationships, our mental well-being, the
Yeah.
things that allow us to keep producing,
To keep laying those golden
to
eggs.
keep laying those golden eggs. Exactly.
It's about finding that balance, like you
Yeah.
said, between achieving goals, but also investing in your ability to keep achieving.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's about sustainability for your whole life.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got proactive behavior.
Mm-hmm.
We've got this, like our internal compass.
Right.
We're taking care of the goose.
Yep.
What's next?
That brings us to habit 2. Begin with the end in mind.
Okay.
It's about getting really clear on your personal mission statement, your vision for your life,
Okay.
and making sure that your actions align with that vision.
So if we go back to that, like, funeral visualization,
Mm-hmm.
it's about really thinking about what we want our legacy to be.
Precisely.
Okay.
It's like, he says, if the ladder is not leaning against the right wall, every step we take just gets us to the wrong place faster.
Oh, wow.
We need to make sure we're climbing the right ladder.
Yeah, for sure. And to do that, we need to define what success actually means to us.
Exactly.
Not what society tells us or what our parents expect,
Right.
but what actually resonates with our values and our aspirations.
Absolutely.
This is powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're being proactive. We're defining our vision.
Uh-huh.
And now it's time to put those things into action, right?
Absolutely. And that's where habit 3 comes in. Put first things first.
Okay.
This is all about effective time management and prioritization.
Mm-hmm.
But again, he goes deeper than just creating a to-do list.
Okay, so what's the Covey twist on time management?
He introduces this brilliant tool called the time management matrix,
Okay.
which helps you categorize tasks based on their urgency and importance.
Mhm.
You know, a lot of us get caught up in that quadrant of urgency,
Oh, tell me about it.
constantly putting out fires, feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah, I practically live in that quadrant some weeks.
But Covey argues that to be truly effective,
Yeah.
we need to prioritize the things that are important but not urgent. Those quadrant 2 activities
Right.
that are often easy to procrastinate on,
Uh-huh.
but they have a huge impact on our long-term goals.
So things like planning, building relationships, personal development.
Exactly. Things that are crucial but don't always have like a screaming deadline,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
And by investing time in those quadrant 2 activities, we're essentially preventing future crises and building the capacity to achieve our goals without constantly feeling like we're playing catch up.
This reminds me of something else Covey talks about, the emotional bank account.
Yes. A brilliant metaphor for describing the trust we build in relationships. Think of it like a real bank account.
Okay.
You make deposits through kindness, honesty, keeping commitments, and you make withdrawals through disrespect, unkindness,
Right.
or broken promises.
So if I'm constantly like criticizing someone or making them feel unimportant, I'm racking up withdrawals from that emotional bank account.
You got it.
Okay.
And just like with a financial bank account,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have a positive balance,
Yeah.
things start to fall apart. Communication breaks down, resentment builds, and the relationship suffers.
Right.
You know.
I could definitely see that play out in my own life.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I have a strong emotional bank account with someone, we can navigate like disagreements or misunderstandings much more easily.
Exactly. It's like having this reserve of goodwill
Mm-hmm.
that allows you to weather those inevitable storms
Right.
that come up in any relationship.
Now I see why Covey brings up the emotional bank account before diving into like habits 4, 5, and 6.
Mm-hmm.
These are like the relationship habits.
You're catching on quickly.
Yeah.
He's laying the groundwork for effective interaction with others.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
So we're ready for the next ones.
Let's do it.
All right.
Yeah.
That's right. So like those next few habits are about
Yeah.
navigating relationships in a way that builds trust and creates win-win situations,
Okay.
which leads us perfectly into habit 4, think win-win,
Okay.
you know? Now, this is a term that you hear a lot in like the business world,
Right.
but I think Covey gives it a much deeper meaning.
Yeah, it's easy to think of win-win as just like a negotiation tactic,
Right.
like splitting the difference to make a deal. But Covey is talking about something much bigger.
He is. He's suggesting a fundamental shift in mindset.
Okay.
Instead of seeing every interaction as like a zero-sum game, you know?
Yeah.
Or someone has to win and someone has to lose, he encourages us to look for solutions where everyone benefits.
So it's about moving away from that scarcity mentality.
Yes.
The idea that there's only so much to go around.
Yeah.
And embracing like the idea of abundance.
That's a great way to put it. The scarcity mindset can really hold you back, both personally and professionally. It breeds competition, resentment, and ultimately it limits everyone's potential.
Can you give me an example of how this plays out in real life?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Think about a workplace where everyone is constantly trying to, outshine each other.
Oh, yeah.
Hoarding information, afraid to collaborate.
Right.
That's a classic example of scarcity mindset in action.
Yeah, that sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It is. Now, in contrast, an abundance mindset creates a culture of generosity, support, and shared success. It allows people to bring their best selves to the table without feeling threatened.
So how do you actually, cultivate a win-win mindset? Especially if you're surrounded by people who are stuck in that scarcity trap.
Well, that's where all those previous habits come in. Remember, Covey emphasizes the importance of, strong emotional bank accounts. When you have that foundation of trust and goodwill, it's much easier to approach those conversations with a win-win attitude.
It's like that saying, a rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah.
If we're focused on helping each other succeed, everyone benefits in the long run.
Exactly. And that brings us to habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Okay.
Now, this one might seem pretty straightforward, but it's actually one of the most challenging habits to master.
I know what you mean. I'm often so focused on, getting my own point across that I forget to really listen to what the other person is saying.
Yeah. Covey would say that's a common human tendency, Most of us listen with the intent to reply, not to truly understand. We're filtering everything through our own paradigms, our own experiences, and our own assumptions.
So we're not really hearing what the other person is saying.
Right.
We're just waiting for our turn to talk.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
And that's a recipe for, miscommunication, conflict, and missed opportunities.
I can definitely relate to that. It's like those times when you're arguing with someone and you realize you're not even talking about the same thing.
Right.
You're both coming from completely different perspectives.
Absolutely. And Covey tells a great story about this.
Oh.
He remembers this time when he was yelling at his son for not cleaning the garage.
Oh.
But it turned out his son was actually helping a friend who'd been injured.
Oh, wow.
He completely jumped to conclusions without taking the time to understand the situation.
Ouch. I bet that was a humbling moment.
It was.
Yeah.
And it illustrates how crucial it is to, pause, listen, and ask questions before making judgments or trying to impose our own solutions.
So how do we become better listeners? How do we break out of that habit of just, waiting for our turn to talk?
Covey outlines these 4 stages of empathic listening.
Okay.
It starts with mimicking, which is simply reflecting back what you hear the other person saying.
Okay.
Then you move to rephrasing, putting their message into your own words to ensure you're understanding it correctly.
Okay, so those are the first 2 steps. What about the next 2?
The third stage is reflecting feeling, where you try to identify and acknowledge the emotions behind the other person's words. And finally, you reflect both feeling and content.
Okay.
Summarizing their message in a way that shows you understand both their thoughts and their feelings.
That sounds like a pretty intense process.
It can be, but it gets easier with practice.
Okay.
And the payoff is huge.
Right.
When you truly feel heard and understood, it creates this level of trust and connection that makes it so much easier to, work through challenges, find solutions that work for everyone.
This makes me think about something Covey said earlier about how creating psychological air is so important in relationships.
Absolutely. When you practice empathic listening, you're essentially giving the other person that space to breathe, to process their own thoughts and feelings without feeling judged or interrupted.
It's like you're creating a safe container for open, honest communication.
Exactly. And that brings us to habit 6. Synergize, another buzzword that Covey breathes new life into.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork with proactivity, a strong internal compass, taking care of ourselves, creating win-win situations, and seeking to understand others.
Yeah.
Now it's time to bring all that together and create something truly remarkable.
You got it. Covey defines synergy as the principle that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Okay.
When people work together in a truly collaborative and creative way, they can achieve results that none of them could have accomplished on their own.
So it's not just about teamwork.
Yeah.
It's about something much more powerful.
Much more powerful and transformative.
Yeah.
Think of it as like 1 + 1 equaling 3 or even more.
Right.
It's about leveraging the unique strengths and perspectives of everyone involved to unlock this level of creativity and innovation that wouldn't be possible otherwise.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
It reminds me of those times when you're like brainstorming with a group and suddenly someone says something and it sparks this like chain reaction of ideas.
Yeah.
And you end up with a solution that's way beyond anything any of you could have come up with individually.
That's a perfect example of synergy in action, you know? It often feels magical or miraculous, but Covey believes that we can create those kinds of experiences regularly if we have the right conditions in place.
So what are those conditions? What needs to be present for synergy to flourish?
Well, first and foremost, we need a high level of trust among the people involved.
Right.
People need to feel safe to be vulnerable.
Great.
To share their ideas without fear of judgment or ridicule.
It's like creating a space where people can truly let their guard down and be their authentic creative selves.
Exactly. You also need a culture that values differences. Instead of seeing those differences as obstacles, we need to recognize them as like valuable assets.
Right.
You know, different perspectives, experiences, ways of thinking. These are the fuel for innovation.
So it's about celebrating those differences.
Yeah.
And finding ways to leverage them for the benefit of the whole group.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And finally, you need a willingness to like let go of ego and be open to new ideas, even if they challenge your own assumptions.
That could be a tough one.
It can be. It's about recognizing that like you don't have all the answers. And being open to learning from others. True synergy requires humility, a willingness to admit you might be wrong, and a genuine desire to find like the best solution, even if it wasn't your idea.
This makes me think of something Covey said earlier about how like the problem is often in the system, not in the people.
Right.
If you create a system that fosters trust, collaboration, the valuing of differences, you can unleash incredible potential, even with people who might not seem like synergy superstars at first glance.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
You know, it's not about finding the perfect team. It's about creating the right conditions for any team to thrive.
This is so inspiring.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how these habits can transform not just individuals, but entire teams, organizations, even communities.
And it all starts with that internal shift. From dependence to independence to interdependence, you know? We move from relying on others to make things happen to taking responsibility for our own lives to realizing that we can achieve so much more when we work together effectively.
So it's not about becoming like a lone wolf.
No.
It's about recognizing that we're all interconnected and that our greatest achievements often come through collaboration.
Exactly. And that brings us to the final habit, habit 7, sharpen the saw.
Okay.
This one's all about continuous self-renewal, making sure you're taking care of yourself so you can show up as your best self in all areas of life.
Okay. This one sounds a bit more straightforward, but I'm guessing Covey has some unique insights here as well.
You bet he does. He argues that we need to be proactive about renewing ourselves in 4 key dimensions: physical, spiritual, mental, and social emotional.
So it's not just about taking a vacation or getting a massage. It's about like a holistic approach to self-care.
That's right. We need to consistently invest in activities that nourish and strengthen each of these dimensions.
What are some examples of activities that would fall into each of those categories?
Okay. Well, for the physical dimension, it could be anything that like improves your health and well-being.
Okay.
You know, exercise, eating nutritious foods, getting enough sleep.
Right. The things we all know we should be doing.
Things we all know we should be doing.
But often let slip.
Yeah. Now, what about spiritual renewal?
What does that look like?
So that's about connecting with your core values, with your sense of purpose, with something bigger than yourself. It could involve meditation, prayer, spending time in nature, or anything that helps you feel grounded and aligned with your deepest beliefs.
And for mental renewal?
That could involve reading, learning new skills, engaging in like thought-provoking conversations, anything that challenges your mind and expands your perspective.
So it's about keeping your mind sharp and engaged.
Exactly. Preventing stagnation.
Right.
You know? And finally, social emotional renewal is all about nurturing your relationships, building those strong emotional bank accounts with the people you care about. It could involve spending quality time with loved ones, volunteering in your community, practicing empathy and compassion.
So habit 7 is about making sure you're taking care of yourself so you can show up as your best self for others.
It's about recognizing that self-renewal isn't selfish. It's essential for effectiveness and fulfillment.
And it creates this like beautiful cycle.
Yeah.
The more we invest in our own growth and well-being, the more we have to offer to others.
Exactly. Like Covey says, Sharpen the Saw isn't just about maintaining your current level of effectiveness. It's about continuously improving and expanding your capacity to achieve great things.
Wow. I feel like we've been on this incredible journey.
I know, right?
With these 7 habits. It's amazing how Covey weaves them all together. Showing how they build on each other. To create a truly effective and fulfilling life.
You know, it's not just a collection of random tips.
Oh, no.
It's this holistic framework that can really transform every aspect of your life, from personal growth to relationships to professional success.
One thing that really struck me was his emphasis on the inside-out approach. He's constantly reminding us that true change starts from within. We can't control those external circumstances, but we can control our response.
We can control our responses, exactly.
When he challenges us to shift our focus from trying to change the world around us to changing ourselves first to become more proactive, more principle-centered, more focused on what we can control rather than what we can't.
And that internal work then ripples outward, impacting our relationships, our work, our entire lives.
It's like laying a strong foundation that allows us to build something truly remarkable.
Absolutely. And he even talks about how sharpening the saw in those 4 dimensions, physical, spiritual, mental, and social emotional, is essential for being able to even live the other habits effectively. You need that inner strength and resilience to really show up as your best self in all areas of life.
And it's not about being perfect. It's about continuous growth and improvement.
It is.
It's about creating this upward spiral where the more you invest in yourself, the more you have to offer to the world.
Exactly. And that brings us to one of the most powerful concepts in the book, this idea of re-scripting ourselves. Covey argues that we're all living with these scripts, these ingrained patterns of thought and behavior that we've, inherited from our upbringing, our culture, our experiences.
It's like we're on autopilot.
Yeah, we're running these old programs that might not be serving us anymore. And he challenges us to become aware of those scripts, to really examine them and see if they're aligned with the life we want to create. And if not, we have the power to rewrite them, to consciously choose new patterns of thought and behavior that are more in line with our values and goals.
This reminds me of Anwar Sadat, our president of Egypt, who was able to overcome years of ingrained hatred for Israel to ultimately negotiate a peace treaty.
Powerful example.
Yeah, it's a really powerful example of how re-scripting is possible, even in the face of deeply entrenched beliefs.
It's a testament to the power of human will. And our ability to choose a different path even when it seems impossible.
It requires a profound level of self-awareness.
It does.
Commitment to our principles. A willingness to challenge our own deeply held assumptions.
Absolutely.
This has been such an incredible deep dive.
It has.
Covey's work is so rich with insights and practical wisdom.
Yeah.
It's clear why the 7 Habits has become such a timeless classic.
It speaks to our deepest desire to live a life of purpose and meaning, to make a difference in the world and to create something that outlasts us.
So for our listeners out there, what's the key takeaway from all of this? What can they do today to start applying these principles in their own life?
Well, I think the most important message is that effectiveness isn't about finding some magic formula or shortcut. It's about aligning yourself with timeless principles and consistently living those principles in your daily life.
It's about making those small but consistent choices.
That
move you closer to the person you want to be and the life you want to live.
And it's about remembering that you are the author of your own story. You know? You have the power to choose your response to any situation, define your own success, and to create a life that is both meaningful and fulfilling.
If you're feeling stuck or like you're just going through the motions, I really encourage you to revisit these 7 habits. Pick one that resonates with you and commit to putting it into practice this week. You might be surprised by the ripple effect it creates.
And remember, the journey to effectiveness is a marathon, not a sprint. Be patient with yourself. Celebrate small victories. And keep sharpening the saw so you can keep growing and evolving.
That's great advice. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It's been an absolute pleasure exploring the 7 habits with you.
It has been a pleasure.
And for our listeners, if you want to keep this conversation going, head over to our website. Share your thoughts on the 7 habits.
Absolutely.
Tell us which habit resonated with you the most. And let's learn from each other.
We would love to hear from you.
Until next time, keep diving deep